If you are relocating to Portland, Oregon, in this video we're going to talk about 5 steps that you can take to make your transition that much easier. All that starts now. Hey, what's up everybody? This is Paul Clem with the Oregon Relocation Team coming to you from Portland, Oregon. And in this video we're going to talk about a game plan, or rather an outline for a game plan for those who are relocating to Portland, Oregon, the Portland metro area, or Oregon, or really anywhere else. I mean, I think a lot of what we'll be talking about generally applies to, relocation in general, which is what we specialize in. Most of the people that we work with are folks who are relocating to Portland and the metro area from out of state. So because the relocation process presents that many more challenges in terms of buying a home, we like to make things as easy and smooth as possible. From getting to know the area, to learning more about what the process is here locally, to learning about different suburbs and neighborhoods of Portland, all the way down to the strategy that we're going to take to ultimately get you into the home that you want. Oh, and hey, if this is your first time to the channel, or you've been here and you haven't already, and you want to get more videos like this, make sure to hit the subscribe button and tap the little bell to get notified every time we drop a new video. So, relocating to a new area, buying a home, not rocket science, but there are several steps that you can be taking early on during the process, and then once you're actually here looking for homes, to make things as smooth as possible. Our approach is we want to avoid as many unpleasant surprises as possible, make sure the expectations are set every step of the way, so again, things go smoothly and you know what to expect at every turn. Alright, so let's get into it. So step number 1, if you're thinking about relocating to Portland or the metro area, is getting the lay of the land. And there is a ton you can accomplish just by poring over a map. Obviously, we have tons of videos touring different neighborhoods of Portland and different suburbs throughout the Portland metro area. And I think this is as crucial a step as any along the way in terms of really understanding what your options are. Portland is not the biggest city in the country. The metro area is not the biggest either, but it is relatively large no matter where you're coming from in terms of kind of the breadth of what's offered, and geographically where you end up makes a really big difference. Now, there's going to be things that drive your approach to narrowing down the areas that you would be looking in, whether that is moving here for a job, or a specific industry or type of job you would hope to get when you move here. If it is access to certain parks or certain regions of the state, whether it be for recreation, outdoors, things like that. Obviously, that is a big part of the culture here. Again, it could be schools. You go down the list. Obviously, for a lot of people, the list of options for people is going to naturally narrow down relatively quickly. But if you have pored over a map, which I'm sure if you are thinking about moving to Portland, you have, it can be kind of confusing what you're looking at, relative to what's available, or rather, what a specific area looks like, what it offers, the schools, the amenities, shopping, etc. So getting the lay of the land is extremely important and really a crucial step as a step 1 for your relocation process. And so when you look at Portland, it is at the very basic level separated east and west, and that's Portland, and also goes for the metro area as a whole. So the Willamette River runs north-south. You have the east side of Portland and the metro area, where you have southeast and northeast Portland and North Portland, and then you have suburbs like Happy Valley, Milwaukee, Oregon City, Gresham, Troutdale, even areas like Canby that are a little bit further out, a little more small town rural feeling. On the west side, you have Southwest Portland, Northwest Portland, South Portland, which is like the south waterfront. It's really pretty close to downtown Portland. And then you have Beaverton, of course, Hillsborough, areas north of Beaverton like Cedar Mill and Bethany. You have Tualatin, Tigard, West Lynn, Lake Oswego, Wilsonville, Sherwood. I would say a higher concentration of suburbs on the west side of Portland. Portland itself goes about 90 blocks west, and it goes almost 200 blocks east. So when you are on the east side of Portland, it extends a lot further east. On the west side, it doesn't extend as far west. So you don't have to go as far on the west side to start getting into more suburban areas. So then that in and of itself brings up a question, and this is something that we always ask people right out of the gate, is do you envision yourself living in Portland, living in a more dense, walkable urban area? Do you envision yourself living in a more suburban area? And at kind of a very basic level, or at least big picture, that does help start to narrow things down. But even within that, you can get different dynamics in Portland proper or in suburban areas. You can be in a suburb but be in a denser, more walkable area, for example, or you could be in Portland proper and be in a neighborhood that feels much more suburban. And so there's, I think for a lot of people, an environment that they envision themselves in, a specific aesthetic, certain amenities or access to certain things, a type of layout, certain conveniences, whatever it may be. And those, combination of things that somebody might be looking for is not just limited to a suburban area or an urban area. And there's also this third category in Portland, which is more of a rural area. And this could be some of the bedroom communities surrounding the Portland metro area, like I mentioned Canby, but also Forest Grove, Sandy, McMinnville, Newburgh. McMinnville's a little far, but these are smaller towns that are really surrounded by rural area, whether it be farmland or forests, state parks, things like that. So you have this third dynamic where it really feels a lot different than being kind of in the core of the metro area, whether it be urban or suburban. So I think a lot of people are surprised by how many options there are in a more rural setting within, a 40, even 30-minute drive in a lot of cases to downtown Portland. So obviously any of these three categories in Portland and in the metro area are going to present a much different experience as far as your day-to-day living. I should mention with kind of that rural aspect and there being so many options to be in a rural setting, Oregon has really, really strict urban growth boundaries. And so the urban growth boundary for Portland is only extended like every 10 years. So you have this perimeter around the Portland metro area where there's a ton of new construction going on, and then you drive another mile, whether it be west or east or south, north you're gonna go up into Vancouver, but this goes for Vancouver too. You get north of Vancouver, you get into like Ridgefield, where it's a lot more kind of open countryside type feel, but there's a ton of new construction going on there. But the point being is, you have these points kind of at the edge of the urban growth boundary in every direction where you have a ton of new construction. So you get this like these new communities, nice new suburban homes, big single family homes. A lot of these new developments have apartments and townhomes and things like that too. But these nice new shiny communities, and then it just kind of drops off to like countryside very abruptly. So it's a cool dynamic, but either way, point being is you have a ton of options there. You can also look at it from the lens of a newer community, like I was just describing, or an older, more established community. And an older, more established community could be 100, 120 years old. It could be mid-century, 40s, but really 50s, 60s, into the 70s a little bit. And then when you get into the 80s and 90s and now, it's a lot more subdivisions, which is probably more of kind of a typical suburban feeling type neighborhood. And you get that less so in Portland proper, but in every suburb throughout the Portland metro area. You have these subdivisions with kind of 90s traditional homes. Some of that started in the 80s, but continued on through the 2000s, 2010s. And again, a lot of what's being built today is mostly kind of around the perimeter of the metro area. So if you're narrowing it by style of home, age of the community, the type of setting you want to be in, if you're narrowing it by where your job is, by schools, by specific amenities that you want nearby, including shopping, walkability, access to, again, other regions of the state. Like if you're on the west side, you can get out to the Oregon coast a lot quicker. If you're on the east side, you can get over to the mountain, or even out to like Bend in central Oregon a lot quicker. If you are on the south side of the metro area, you can get to Salem and Eugene and down the I-5 corridor a lot quicker. So all of those things are going to be considerations for people. But looking at those primary categories and then narrowing it to what the priorities are for you, again, really starts to kind of naturally narrow down what those options are. That brings me to my next point, which is step 2. After you've started to get the lay of the land a little bit, you really need to connect with a local expert. And of course, we make these videos in part as a sales pitch. You know, people reach out to us all the time who are relocating to Portland and the metro area. And again, that's primarily who we work with. So if you want to reach out to us and give us a call, send us a text, shoot us an email, or click the link down below in the description of the video, schedule a Zoom call with us, whichever you would prefer. We would love to chat more about your move here. But connecting with a local expert doesn't necessarily mean connecting with a realtor. Obviously, if you want to buy a house, that's the traditional path. But I have found that with a lot of people that we are working with, of course, there's a lot that we're offering, in communication with people at this stage. But, if somebody has a friend who lives here, a family member, a coworker, maybe somebody works remote in another state and they're moving here because the company is here, or they're moving here for the lifestyle, but somebody else who, they at least work with virtually lives here. That happens all the time. And I think it really helps to have a second opinion. I mean, I try to be as objective as possible in talking about different areas, what different areas offer, etc. But, it's hard not to be a little bit biased at times. And either way, regardless, I mean, I will give my opinion too. And it is helpful to have the opinion of somebody here locally who isn't also facilitating your home purchase. So a lot of what I've been talking about up to this point, those first couple of steps, are really kind of the first phase of the discovery process, where you're getting to know the communities, you're getting to know the city, you're getting to know the metro area better, and what is going to be offered and where, so you can start to narrow your search geographically. But at this stage, you probably are starting to outline a timeline, and obviously having a timeline one way or another is really important, but those things kind of take care of itself as far as what the deadlines are to move, based on whether it be work or school starting, or you're selling your home. Maybe you've got an offer and now you really need to start looking, for example. So that's obviously a critical step too. It's not a step on this list, but it's pretty self-explanatory. But after this kind of first phase of the discovery process, it's really ensuring that at that point you have the financial picture in order. And at the most basic level, that's, are you paying cash for a home? Are you going to be financing? And then if you are going to be financing, what are your options within that? Are you doing an FHA loan, a VA loan, a conventional loan? Is it a rehab loan? Less common, but those things do happen too. What are lenders offering as far as opportunities to maybe buy down your interest rate, for example, which is something that has been really common in the last couple of years as rates have increased. There are a ton of options for the borrower in this case, to buy points and reduce the interest rate right out of the gate, so you're getting a lower monthly payment, or do a temporary rate buy down, like a 2-1 or a 3-1 buy down. Those are actually paid for by the seller, so that's something that we negotiate in a transaction for the seller to cover. And simply so if it's a 2-1 buy down, in the first year, your rate is 2% less than the market rate at the time you purchased. In the second year, it's 1% less, and then in that third year, it goes back to that market rate. Similar with a 3-2-1, 3% lower the first year, then 2 the second year, then 1 the third year, and then back to that rate. Now you can refinance rather any time in this process, typically. So these have become really handy tools for people where if we're in a situation where we can negotiate, which has been the case quite a bit in the last couple of years, this becomes a really good opportunity for people to take a lower rate today with the opportunity to refinance, not in the next 6 months or 12 months, because rates are probably going to be coming down, but now you have 2 years or 3 years, a little more breathing room, and you're definitely relying on, or at least crossing your fingers for the opportunity to refinance, and there's no guarantee that rates are necessarily going to go down 1% or 2% in the next 6, 12, 18, 24 months, although we are trending in that direction and that is the expectation. But at any rate, having the financial picture in order at this stage is critical, because once you are to the point where you kind of know where you want to be looking, eventually you're going to start looking, right? So we'll talk more about that in a second, but it is really important to in most cases, really even have a pre-approval letter ready before you are ready to look at homes. If you're financing, you need to attach a pre-approval letter with an offer. So it is not uncommon, doesn't always happen, but sometimes the first house you see is the one that you want to pursue, and you want to be in a position at that point to be able to act quickly, and having the pre-approval letter in hand gives you the opportunity to do that. The other piece too, and this is one of the first questions we ask people, is do you need to sell your home before buying your new home? And so that is referred to as making a contingent offer. Offers have a ton of contingencies built in to protect the buyer, like an inspection contingency, for example, but the big C contingency in a contingent offer is the contingency or the fact that your offer is contingent on the sale of your home. So that is something that we work with a lot of people on. Probably half of the transactions we've done in the last couple of years have involved a contingency or a contingent offer. So there are some extra hoops to jump through. There are additional deadlines and timelines to establish right out of the gate and ensure that everything syncs up so that you can put your home on the market, or if your home's already in the market, you can get an offer, close on your sale, turn around and use the funds from your sale to make your purchase. Another piece of this too is a lender will approve you for a specific amount that you can borrow, but the amount that you can borrow isn't necessarily the amount that everybody wants to borrow. In fact, most people don't go to their max ability, right, as far as what they're able to borrow. And if you are financing, what most people are looking at is their monthly budget. And so everybody's expenses are different. What they can afford to, or rather what they want to pay for a mortgage and taxes and interest on a monthly basis is going to vary wildly. So it's not uncommon for me to start working with somebody and they get pre-approved for X amount, and then of course, I'm searching for homes for somebody in a specific price range based on what they're telling me they can afford. And again, it's not always the case that what you can afford according to the lender is actually what you want to be paying. So there are additional steps that we can take to at least get a really good ballpark number. Say if you were going to borrow $500,000 and you had $300,000 to put down, so that would put you about an $800,000 budget range. Now we might run the numbers and say, okay, if you're borrowing $500,000, your monthly payment's going to be this. Somebody might say, we don't want it to be that high. And we say, okay, what would it be if we looked in the 700 or 750 range, for example? And that's also going to vary quite a bit with property taxes, especially in this area where in Multnomah County, where Portland and Gresham are, property taxes are considerably higher in most cases than in Washington County or Clackamas County, which are more suburban counties in this tri-county area that makes up the Portland metro area. So a lot of people will look for homes both in Portland and just over the county line, east or west, into Clackamas or Washington County. And it might be the case where, say, if we're using the example of $800,000 house, maybe the taxes are $13,000 a year in Portland, and they might be $7,500, $8,500, $9,000, whatever it may be in Washington County or Clackamas County per year. And it really can be that big of a discrepancy, and that affects your monthly payment a ton. So if we're pursuing a property, and if we're really kind of shopping that monthly budget, we can at any step get a better sense of, is this going to be a comfortable payment? Okay, so that's step number 3, is getting the financial picture in order. Step number 4 is starting your search. So you probably have done this, or you've probably been doing this. This probably started before step 1. I mean, this is something that everybody does. Browse Zillow, Realtor.com, Redfin, and look at listings. Of course, why wouldn't you? But this, once you get to the point where you know where you want to be looking, you know what the budget's going to be, now it's actually time to get into kind of that phase 2 of the discovery process, which is actually going to tour properties. And again, most of the people we work with, probably not unlike yourself, are coming here from another state. So it can be obviously difficult to search for homes when you're not here to see them in person. So that is something that we are really accustomed to facilitating. And everybody that we work with that is relocating here from out of state, we end up doing virtual tours. Either we schedule 1 tour, 3 tours, 5 tours, whatever it may be, and we tour them together, like over FaceTime or over a video call. Or what probably ends up happening more often is I would schedule a tour, I'd go walk through a property and take about 20 minutes worth of video, going through, pointing out more often than not, pointing out defects. When you see a house online, when you see a listing online, nowadays the foremost marketing strategy is screen appeal. So, the property description, the write-up, and of course the photos are meant to paint a home in its best light. And sometimes it does a perfect job. Sometimes it exceeds or exaggerates maybe what you're actually getting in the home. And every once in a while, the photos don't really show the true potential. So when I am going to tour a property for somebody and I'm taking videos, I'm going through and pointing out the things that are accurately represented, misrepresented, or maybe something that would have been missed only seeing the photos online. Now, in a perfect world, somebody relocating here will schedule a trip out, even if it's a couple days, and we'll see as many homes as possible. Sometimes it's several trips, not everybody can do that. And so in a perfect world, you fly out here and we see a dozen properties or 20 properties or whatever it may be, and one of them is the perfect fit. We write an offer, we get the house, and we're off and rolling. Probably less than 50% of the time, realistically, that happens. We're always at the mercy of what's available at any given moment. And so there's always going to be options for the most part. There's always going to be things to go see, to go tour. But it doesn't always happen that we find a winner on that initial trip that you took out. So again, some people will visit a few times and will continue to go through that process. But more often than not, we will just do a lot of those virtual tours. And really, if you've come out and we've toured places and we've gone through together and we've started to hone in on what the preferences are, the needs, the wants, the must-haves, I think people do tend to start feeling pretty comfortable about potentially making an offer, quote, sight unseen. I would never encourage somebody to do that, but it often happens by necessity, where somebody has to be here in a home by X date, and now we're up against the clock, and we have to just go through and be as thorough as possible. More often than not, I am trying to talk somebody out of a place than talk them into it. So, that's our approach, and it's it works pretty well. I think you can get 80-90% of the way as far as getting a true idea, a true sense of what a home has to offer, by seeing videos, doing a FaceTime tour, and we can go back several times. It's not like, here's 15, 20 little snippets of video and, give a yay or nay. No, I mean, we can go back a second or a third time to make sure that this is, really going to be a good fit. All right, so if you've made it to step 5, that means that you are making an offer on a home. And there's so much that we could talk about. I don't want to drag this video out much longer, but we'll talk a little bit about that step of the process as far as what I would be facilitating, what the considerations are, what are the things that we can do to vet a property before actually deciding to write an offer, and just overall, what is that process going to look like? So again, what are the considerations? I think at this stage, we will probably have looked at several homes, some together, some we've exchanged emails, phone calls, texts, etc., and I've toured them and we've talked about them. And through those conversations, both the buyer is starting to refine the preferences, in particular based on what's available. Things always will change and evolve just based on what you can actually get here. And then I'm learning too, through those conversations, what the priorities really are, what the trade-offs could be, what might you be willing to not sacrifice necessarily, but where might you be willing to make an exception, in particular if a house has 8 of the 10 boxes checked as far as those top priorities for you. So when we're talking about what the considerations are, those are the conversations that we're having, and whether it is area focused, schools, shopping, and obviously the house in particular, the age, the condition, even things like the layout, the size of the yard, the orientation of the yard, back, front, side, etc. Those things start to become more and more clear as far as, again, what somebody's priority is as we get further along in the process. So if we're at the point where we are considering making an offer on a home, we're really evaluating all of that top to bottom, inside and out. And there's a lot of pre-due diligence that can be done prior to making an offer too. Obviously, when you make an offer, get under contract to purchase a home, you'll be doing a home inspection. You'll be reviewing the title report for the history of the title of the property. And there's a lot of things that we're checking and verifying and making sure that it's a good situation. But again, a lot of that can be done up front. So usually we can have an opportunity to see the seller's property disclosures, to see what the seller has to say about the condition of the home. Obviously, there's a lot that we're observing, touring the home, whether it be remodel that's been done, remodel that's needed, whether it is some defect, water related in particular. We have a very wet climate, so that is always something that we're looking out for, and water can cause a lot of trouble. So if there is issues with water under the house, or maybe the roof is old, for example, that's something that would lead to leaks in the roof, for example. So there's a lot of things that we're looking at as far as the home itself, the condition of the home, and we want to get as much history from the seller as possible, if possible, at that stage. Now, if we're in a competitive scenario and maybe we're competing against another offer or 5 other offers, we can still gather as much information as possible at that stage. We're probably going to have to move a lot quicker, and a lot of those things, what we have the opportunity to do as far as considering what price to offer, for example, goes out the window, because now we are in like an auction process more so than, okay, what is the value of this home, all else held equal with no other offers on the table. Where do we want to come in on price, considering what it's going to take for us to make the updates that we want to make the repairs that might need to be done, etc. Again, a more competitive situation, those things are taken into consideration, but you don't nearly have as much leverage, probably none, depending on the circumstance, with a lot of that stuff. So that's a big part of what we're discussing though at that stage, what the strategies are for the offer that we're going to write. I totally believe in being fair. I work with people who say, you know what, let's give them their asking price, kind of no questions asked. And I always tell people what I think the possibilities are as far as what price we could get a home for. And I also work with people who say, you know what, let's come in 50 grand below list, or let's come in, X amount below the list price, and let's just see what they're willing to do. I'm happy to facilitate that too. Again, I want to be able to offer as much perspective at that point or at that stage around what the possibility probably is, where we could probably likely land. And a lot of it depends on, again, some of the observations made as far as the condition of the home, but also how motivated are the sellers, how long has the home been on the market. How long has the seller been in the home? Did they buy it 2 years ago, or did they buy it 25 years ago? What the seller might be willing to do on price and concessions is really affected by where they need their bottom line to be. And again, if somebody purchased a home recently, they very well could be shooting for a break-even point. And I've seen, unfortunately, a lot of situations in the last couple of years where somebody has sold a home for at or less than what they purchased it for a year ago, 2 years ago. So again, all of these things are being taken into consideration when we're talking about writing an offer and actually pursuing a home. But at the end of the day, the goal is to get the house that you like, and a big part of that conversation can come down to, do we want to get the house or do we want to get the best deal? And my whole thing at that stage is, okay, is this a good deal? Is this a fair deal? Or is this an overpay? And I will be, completely upfront with what that looks like. And we can look at comparable sales. There's so many things that we can look at to understand what that house is probably worth within a pretty tight range. So again, I don't want to drag that piece out too much. There's obviously all the things that we can talk about too. Once you get under contract, what that timeline looks like, how we approach the process. But that is a conversation perhaps that we can have over a Zoom call or a phone call. And if you are thinking about moving to Portland, and if you want to talk more about just putting together a plan for relocating here, if you want to talk more about neighborhoods or suburbs or whatever would be helpful at the stage that you are at, give us a call, send us a text, shoot us an email, or click the link down below in the description of the video. Schedule a Zoom call with us. We can talk all about it. If this video was helpful, make sure to hit the like button. That helps us out a lot. If you want to get more videos like this, make sure to hit the subscribe button, tap the little bell to get notified every time we drop a new video. As always, we really appreciate you watching. Until next time, we'll talk to you later.